Hey! Good morning, guys. How are we doing?
Doing well. Did that music actually end? I thought that bit went just a little bit longer.
Yeah. You know Restream, right? She is a fickle UI. Hey, well, good morning, everybody. Hey, Andy. Good morning. How the heck are you, buddy?
Good morning, Chris and Kevin. I am doing well. It's an honor to be on the show with y'all today. Thank you.
The honor is all ours.
Yes. And big shout outs. Good morning to Jason, Aaron, Daniel. Good to see you. We've got Donald. Make sure you're being safe out there and driving, right? Like, gotta be those roads are not necessarily the best place for chatting. So don't feel like you're going to offend us if you don't if you're not actively chatting. Okay. But it's good to see everyone here today. So excited for you all to be here. Hey, Andy. Now, I've been following you for a long time. You've been doing this for more than a day or two. You want to give a little bit of background in yourself?
Sure. So I've been involved in technology since I was 11. I am a little older than 11 now. In fact, it will have been 50 years in May.
Wow.
When I started back in 1975. Long story I won't go into, but just always enjoyed technology from that age forward, and kind of had a knack for doing that sort of work. It was a hobby for 20 years, and then it started showing up in my job when I became an electrician at a manufacturing plant, and we used Motorola based programmable logic controllers, PLCs. And I happened to learn machine code first when I was 11 for a Motorola M6800. And it turned out these Allen Bradley PLCs used, the great grandchild of that, a 68,000 chip.
Holy cow! You're going back. You're taking me back to my days working at Rockwell Automation.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
I was a huge RSView fan.
Oh, yeah.
The human machine interfaces, HMIs, and this one time I was actually coding that very thing, RSView, on a machine, and I was a master electrician for a while, an electrical contractor. I would rebuild.
Haven't we
mostly.
All been? I mean,
that's really. right.
Rebuild the control panel. I think I'm out on this one. So
you're not. Are you out, Kevin? I'm sorry.
I've talked to people about PLCs and everything, but never had to get into them. You guys keep going. I'm fine. I got my coffee. It's fine.
It's a lot of fun. So it turns out that the software we use now, I can't remember the name of the logic software we use, but you could program it in what's called ladder logic. This is going back to the very first computers actually used.
I believe that the predecessor to that was rocks and sticks. So,
it was.
I mean, that kind of tells you how long,
or an actual ladder. But
yeah.
My joke is, back in those days, we had to carve our own chips out of wood, and we liked it. Yeah. So, but you could do that. You could code in ladder logic, or you could code over in basically in the hex in the machine code. And
way back down in the bowels of it, huh?
Yeah. So I was working one night, and we were doing this machine that had a rotating table, which I think in charts and graphs, which, don't hate me, but I saw that picture, and it's the same picture that I put in my mind, years earlier, about, doing bit shift operations, load accumulator A, and then bit shift left, bit shift right. And I was able to go and write the code. I couldn't figure out how to write it in ladder logic, but I could write it in machine code. So anyway, I did that. Later, I was working on RSView, trying to get a machine electrical control system to work better. I had rebuilt the electrical control panels for that. Big job. It took months. And wanted to store so data points, and you could set the frequency that you stored a tag. And I configured it was like 1,100 tags in this particular machine, and I set them all to record every second, writing it to access. I want to say it was access 97, 98, somewhere in there. Ran it for a long weekend, came back, and there was a 4 gig file sitting there. And I went to open it, and for some reason it wouldn't open.
Yeah, because back in those days,
I can't
that was
imagine.
big data.
4 gig was big data.
It was
You're
big data in
absolutely
those
right,
days. Yeah,
Kevin. Yeah. So I did. I went to telling on myself a little bit more, altavista.digital.com. And I typed in Microsoft database, and I saw this word I'd never seen before, SQL Server. What's that?
Oh, we're going way back.
Went to a computer show in Richmond, which is just up the road from Farmville, where I live and grew up. And back then they had these shows. People would set up tables and sell software and hardware and all sorts of stuff. Bought a not for resale copy. Confessing here. Hopefully the statute of limitations is out. SQL Server 6.5 NFR. Repeated the test. It worked. I went right to the plant manager and said, we need this instead of this access thing. And I mean, we weren't collecting. There was no need to collect 1,100 data points, tags, values every second. But I wanted to stress it. And, it turned out that I did.
Yeah.
But we ran with that, started there, and we were collecting data from those data points. And I began then building. I was dabbling in HTML, and I built screens for the plant to read outside of the control system, human machine interface, RSView. Other people in the plant needed to track this data, and I built. As far as I know, it wasn't the first, I don't think, but I don't know of anybody else. Somebody had to think of this at the same time. I built effectively a web-based manufacturing execution system in the 90s.
Wow.
And dynamic HTML wasn't a thing. I had a hidden form on the server that also did the web serving, written in VB3. And every 3 or 4 minutes, it would go read the net. There it was like 19.2K net. Pull all the register values in, and it would write over the .htm file. Chris.
Oh wow.
And, that's me,
Andy.
Now I do other stuff.
So now we're going to take that and say, well, how would you do that in 2025 here in Fabric?
Oh, it would be way different. It's so much easier now to do this stuff, especially with Fabric, because everything's in the box. And you could think of that. Fabric is a big box. And so the engineering part of it is still engineering.
Yeah.
But you have so many more options now with it. And, at the top of the box in Fabric is Power BI, and you can write all kinds of cool. No VB3 forms hidden on the page overwriting the HTML files. It just plugs right in, and you get these nice dashboards. And I love the interconnection about the little. I'm going to use the wrong word. I don't even. But the little dashboardlets. You got the graphs. You click one thing and it lights everything else up, for that particular thing.
All right. You've heard it here first, people. Dashboardlets. That's the new term for
trademark
referring to anything
Andy.
Power BI related. Dashboardlet.
I don't know the right. That's one of the signs of intelligence, by the way, is you know what to call things, and I clearly do not. But I do have a license to
hang
spell.
on one second, though, Andy. Before we dive too deep into the whole subject, and the reason we're here is we're going to be talking about data engineering, and we're getting right into that. Want to lay a few ground rules for everybody, okay? First off, if you have questions, we're here to answer your questions. Be part of the conversation. So put those in the chat. Prefix the question with a Q colon. We'll make sure that we help, get to those questions. We'll bring those up to the top, all that good stuff, right? Please don't spam any questions. We haven't had that, but if you were to spam, one of the people that are in the chat with the little like monkey wrench right by their name, there are admins. They'll put you on mute so that you can't spam us and whatnot. And along with those lines, if you want to be like you like the content, make sure you like and subscribe. I would wager everyone here has so far, but if you haven't already, make sure you liked and subscribed. And if you want to support the work that Kevin and I are doing here, because it does cost us some money to get this thing up and running. Become a member of the channel for as little as $5 a month. You can support us, and you'll get early access to all the videos that come out and good content. So it's just a good way to engage with us. But before we get into that, we're going to do the question of the day to get the answers from the audience. Hey, how do you define data engineering? Okay, so let us know what your thoughts are on how you define data engineering. When you keep that in your head, leave those in the chat so we can start to speak to that. Okay. And then as we're getting into this question, this is something that is brand new for me, and Kevin and Andy, we were just talking like this just showed up. Oh, hey, look at that.
You got one.
Welcome, Belinda.
Thanks,
Yay.
Belinda.
Someone
I
live
believe I know
became
Belinda.
a member. Oh, thanks, Belinda.
Yeah, I think I've met Belinda.
Belinda's amazing. She is the true MVP of the MVPs. There's no one greater than she in the MVP program.
Excellent. So. Thanks, Belinda.
Yeah. Oops.
Whoa. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like that.
That gets a special visual there.
Yeah. Here you can see how we manage this stuff. Belinda, you're not the first. You'll see that people with the star next to their name are members. So I think we have Jason Campbell is one of our top 10. Both of you are in the top 10. Jason became a member, I think, earlier this week or maybe last week. Cool. Notifications aren't great unless it's live. So
yeah. And Sean's who's usually here. Sean Lilly.
Yep, Sean Lilly. Sean Lilly was the first.
He was the first. Okay, that's right. That's why I remember it.
He's definitely the first one here. But so it's exciting stuff. Want to call out this amazing thing that just hit the records though. If you look, this is Fabric Unified Admin Monitoring, and this is the basic version. It's out on Git. I just put the link in the chat, but basically it's got some like it's got all the code available to do this like really in-depth monitoring of your solution. So you can see they've put a ton of time into this, and this is prepared by some of our friends over in Germany. 2 strong engineers and or 3 strong engineers. 2 are in the like data engineering community. One's a Microsoft employee. So like this is a like legit solution. I mean, I'm just kind of like quickly going through this. It's pretty impressive. They've got YouTube videos on how to install it. So you can like actually like go through and be one of the first 210 views of it. There's 4 likes on it, but there's a lot to it. And I mean, the reality is it's deployed just basically using native components in Fabric. So you need to have a lakehouse. You deploy or you save you create a folder called deployment subfolders, then you save this file into it, and then I mean a couple of changes here for your service account and service principal and stuff like that, and then that's it. Like this is in theory it's a 30-minute install. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it looks amazing to me. I read through it the other day. I stumbled upon it somewhere. I can't remember what conversation, and I made sure I earmarked it and started looking at it. I need to try to find time to install it on my tenant first to kind of mess with it, but definitely probably going to start pushing it out to clients soon, to other places soon. So It
Yeah.
looks unbelievable.
Yeah. Oops. Let's get there. We go.
Yeah,
But Andy, when we kind of were prepping the show, you had an interesting comment about this that I think is makes a great sense. Is you called this a framework? What do you mean by that?
So frameworks are a way to encapsulate execution orchestration and externalizing or configuring, parameterizing sets of parameters, and then logging. And we've seen this all throughout software development. Frameworks go hand in hand with design patterns, I believe. And I think they all fall under the umbrella of software development best practices. And I was an MCSD, a Microsoft Certified Solutions Developer, back before .NET became a thing. So a long, long time ago, when the years began with a 1. And I kind of saw the evolution of the .NET framework. And it's just a way to encapsulate a lot of complexity and hopefully surface something that's less complex. It doesn't mean it isn't complex when you start, messing with a framework, but being able to, to facilitate observability, which became a big buzzword, I'd say a year and a half ago, somewhere in that neck of the woods. It's still a big buzzword. It's a big deal. You want to surface what the system is doing for you, and you want to do that in a way. In my humble opinion, if you do it correctly, at a glance, you can glean what's happening, perhaps in your entire enterprise.
Yeah.
And data warehousing is a collection of complex steps that have to happen in a certain order. And being able to load that data into whatever your target is, you're reading it from some source, you're collecting and putting it in a data lake house, or even a star schema. And you want to see what's happening with that process, especially if something goes sideways, right? If you can't open the 4 gig file, if the file isn't there, you want to track that sort of stuff, and you want it so simple that if you're awakened at 2 a.m. by some alert, you can log in and in a couple of clicks know this is the problem, and you can then start trying to fix it.
Yeah, if anybody that I work with is listening, that's always my line too. Think about this: if you're being woken up at 2 a.m. and have to fix it, right? And so the design patterns, right, the implementation patterns, right, and encapsulating all of that into a framework so that, because I tend to stress that at all of the places that I put in an architecture, do it the same way every single time so that you don't have to think. And I loved what you were saying there is the framework encapsulates the complex, right? So it doesn't, it makes it less complex for somebody else, but it doesn't mean that you're not using complex components, right? So it's just that the framework that you choose to put in ends up being better. So how would you relate that to data engineering, and maybe help us answer the question of the day, right? What is data engineering to you?
Simply, it's picking data up from wherever it lives and collecting it into one centralized location. The biggest reason you would want to do that is you want to be able to report, do analytics on all of that data scattered all over wherever it is these days. And in doing so, in writing those queries, those analytics queries, they often tax the system of record. And that system may be making you money, at the time. You don't want to have someone have to wait or some lock be placed on the database while they're trying to purchase your product or service. So what you want to do is not impede that. First, do no harm, if you will. Not impede the system of record from doing its job. You want to grab that data in as clean and quick and non-invasive a way as possible, and store it over here somewhere so that when you execute that DAX or whatever the query engine you're using to pull that data, that may take some time. It may take some cycles. you don't want that stopping your system over here from running.
Yeah,
That's data
exactly.
engineering.
Yeah, and especially, like we talk about in reporting, right? And we've talked here, I think, a lot. The differences between an online transactional system, the sales system, right? A lot of companies, right? You lock that thing up, they're not making money anymore, right?
Yeah.
But then you still want to be doing some type of analytics, the online analytical processing, and with Power BI, that's usually better in the star schema, right? So the data engineering is whatever you're doing to go from A to B, right? And make it more efficient. And yeah.
Hey, I've got a question for you, because one of the things that I've always thought, and when I say data engineer, and maybe I'm wrong on this, I want to get your feedback on it, is yes, it's all of the things that you're talking about. Um, but I've always thought that there was a difference between the difference that separated out, and I could be completely wrong on this, and I'm happy to be wrong on it. The difference that separated out a data engineer from like a data analyst or just a data jockey is a data jockey copies, pastes, does stuff in a very ad hoc, improper manner, where a data engineer does kind of what you were talking about, Andy, with the frameworks. And an engineer builds parameterized frameworks that allows for the efficient and effective movement of data. And what the transition from a data jockey or a citizen data, I guess a citizen data engineer, is that step into that more professional or seriously like engineered path forward. How, am I off? What about that resonates with you? What doesn't sound right? What's your thoughts there?
So I love that description. I would refine what you describe as a data jockey as that's an actual part of now what is AI is the data exploration part. And that is a function of data engineering. You need to do data profiling. You need to find out statistical things about your sources in order to design the data warehouse, what Kevin aptly referred to as the online analytical processing, or OLAP, a section of that. How you structure that will largely be driven by what you learn when you're doing that data jockey role you were just talking about. And that discovery, that exploration is what a number of people do to quickly get a snapshot of the of the data. And a lot of times it's for machine learning or artificial intelligence these days. And it's a part of the role. I mean, it really is. It's a different goal, but you're still trying to do it. What you said about data engineering, I think, is spot on. The one caveat that I would throw into that is just something I didn't get to, is if you have, I don't know, a couple dozen pipelines and you're loading, a couple dozen sources tables into some target, you don't need the overhead of something as complicated as a framework. There's a kind of a spot where a dash line where below that volume, it's diminishing returns.
Sure.
To go in and add something like this, even something as cool and snappy looking as that framework you shared. It's still still some overhead there. But if you're running, a couple of thousand pipelines, or maybe even a couple hundred, you've got something like this, because it's just not easy to manage.
Right.
Either that, or you have a team of data engineers that are doing all of that work, and you need some way to consolidate.
Fernando has a comment here that I kind of like, and but I want to talk to that. He says citizen and engineer don't belong together, and I guess what I like about that is the idea that someone who's not an engineer shouldn't necessarily take on that title and with the false like assuredness that comes along with it, right? the thing I'm challenged by that is I think that is like there's a progress and why I kind of called those out because I think there's the data jockey who's just copying and pasting and hooker by crook getting data and um uh I think people start there. Everyone starts there getting data, right? Like I think Andy, you told us on your journey it was a very very similar to that, although I think you started with a much more engineering mindset. But I think citizen data engineer exists as people start to realize the challenges with being a data jockey. And they go, I need to automate my loads. I need to start to do things that's not the manual processing, the manual copying and pasting, right? And that's where I like the term citizen data engineer because I think it encapsulates a difference between a data jockey, a citizen data engineer, and a data engineer. And it kind of creates that path that people may choose to go on as part of their career progression or not, right? Like maybe you stop at citizen data engineer and that's good enough for you.
Well, I think the data jockey that you mentioned, right? I think they start to believe that they grow, hey, I'm gonna automate this, and they're gonna put something in, right? And then they start thinking that they're a data engineer, and maybe they're getting closer, right? But then, as to Andy's point, if you're not putting in some type of framework, you're not putting in logging, you're not doing something like that, right? Then you probably haven't fully made it to data engineer. But what's nice in Fabric and what we see at least coming, right, is Fabric puts in its own monitoring, its own logging about everything that you run. So Fabric itself has those frameworks that I think allow the data jockeys to become data engineers faster. But they still got to kind of know some of the stuff that how it got logged, where they could use it so that at 2 a.m. they could solve the problem, right? Or when something goes wrong, how to find out what happened and maybe put in their own logging too to make that even easier, right? And I think, Andy,
Kevin,
that's where the frameworks come in.
You make a great point. Is Fabric just one big framework for data?
Definitely, yeah. I
Could be.
I think frameworks, right? You have a framework, then you get another framework within that framework, right? And Andy's conversation earlier about the framework is just is encapsulating the complexity, right? So yeah, Fabric itself is encapsulating the complexity for logging for us, right? Or even with Power BI a while ago when you could put in log analytics to see what was going on inside your semantic model. That's putting in a framework to start being able to see your logging faster. So yeah, I think so. Andy, what would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to call out Belinda's comment. If you're able to see the comment, looks like she's commenting here from YouTube. That is a great description of the life cycle of the data in any data engineering process, whether it's the data jockey who is, as you describe it, copying and pasting the data. I don't see any issue with that. If you can get away with that, and there are a number of business reasons even why you may want to just stay at that level with the work. It's not saying that you're not ascending to some higher level or anything like that. It's you're getting the job done, and if that's working, it's good. That's the very first thing I would say about that. But again, the point that is if your data management in the data engineering life cycle becomes more complicated, then you can actually invest in putting some wrappers around it, doing some encapsulation, creating repeatable processes for all of the steps Belinda listed there. Then you can, and metadata driving, absolutely, Christina. It's good to see you. All of that, you can actually get some value. It's that juice is actually worth the squeeze once you cross some threshold in complexity. And some of our clients that I've done this sort of work for don't have big data, a gigabyte of data or less. But what they have is very hard data very complicated data. The relationships are crazy. And when you get into that data cleansing step that Belinda pointed out, it may become at least a two-step process where the first time you're checking, first pass, you're checking to see, is this data that I'm reading from some flat file, where all data in a flat file is text? Well, not true for Delta and some of the Parquet files, but it starts as text. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
And it may be encoded in any kind of format, but you read that data in, and it's going to come in as text to you in, say, comma separated values and things like that. A CSV file may be that way, but you want to look first to see, are my date fields actually dates? You're doing things like running that isDate function, in SQL Server or in whatever language that you're using. You're checking to see. And if it isn't a date, you probably want to send that row to some next step. So usually that becomes a table where humans intervene and check, because if you got that bad data in there, you don't know what else may be a little sideways in that particular row of data. So you start with that cycle, and it's the beginning of a continuous improvement cycle, which I learned back in the 1990s when I was working in a plant. I learned about Six Sigma. I learned about statistical process control and all of that. It was fascinating. I got taught a lot of that information from a professor at a community college who learned it directly from a guy named W. Edwards Deming. And if you want to go down a rabbit trail, look up his work on quality. A lot of our software quality actually comes from his writings and work back in the middle of the 1900s there. But
I think I'm getting flashbacks. I almost kind of remember that name now as you gave me the context.
Yeah, but it's fascinating. All of that works. All of that works the same. So you do that data quality. You see, first step, does it match? Is this a number? It's supposed to be some value. Is it a number? You do that check. It's supposed to be a date. Is it a date? And then your second check, and this is where like my customer that I'm using in my mind as the reference with 1 gig of data, they do stuff related to insurance. So then it becomes, you've got an initial date for the claim being processed, and then you've got another date where the claim moves to the second step in the process, and then there's a closing date when the claim is settled. You want to make sure those dates are in chronological order, because if they're not, they could pass the isDate test. But then if the start date is after the close date, that may be another record. You just want to move out of the pipeline process into a spot where humans are made aware of it and they have to go investigate
and do something to see that somebody fat finger it in or whatever, right? So
it's like a hard rule and then a soft rule, if you will. And you have a number of processes that you want to go through in what I consider real data engineering, where you want to do those data quality checks, and you want to make sure that the data you're looking at is valid, because at the goal at the end of the day for a data engineer is to produce accurate data as fast as possible. And it doesn't matter how fast you produce it if it's inaccurate.
And that's where, again, it becomes easier when you think about frameworks, implementing code patterns, reusable code patterns, right? Because just like you're referencing the isDate function, right? That's just a reusable code pattern that Microsoft, SQL Server happened to implement for us. Absolutely. But then when you're saying now check, this whatever claim in insurance or whatever, or something, and check the orders of the dates, you want to look to say, as you're developing that, can you produce something that's reusable so that you do it in other places as well? And then you have the code written once, that code works, right? Regardless if you called it in these other places. All of that, as you start doing it, builds what we were talking about, your framework, and it could be a framework within your framework, right? So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The design patterns and frameworks go hand in hand. And yeah, I remember, and quality and testing in software development. I don't know if I've made this statement here yet, but if I have, it's worth repeating. Data engineering is software development.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And back when I was about to make the transition from software developer, which I was doing intranet web pages for manufacturing, it was a great job for me because I already understood the engineering on the plant floor, and I had dabbled enough in active server pages development to be able to produce these web pages that were interactive at some spot. But it's very much software development, and I had just gotten into what at the time was called fail first development,
Mm-hmm.
and that name was replaced by test driven development. But when I read that fail first, I was like, this is perfect.
Yeah.
I do this all the time.
I still do
Fail,
it.
fail, fail. Same,
Yeah.
right? Fail,
Yeah.
fail,
I
fail,
did it this
succeed.
morning. I failed first.
And
but
that
that's
all of these
actually-
practices,
Yeah,
stuff go
and
together.
that pivots on something you said earlier about continual improvement, right?
Mhm.
Like continual improvement, but having your baseline or MVP clearly defined, right? MVP is high quality, accurate data. So a failure is the data's not accurate, but you leverage frameworks to advance what you're doing so that you get to accurate, and then you advance the speed of time it takes to get faster and more real time, right?
Yep.
Because I think everyone should be clear, the goal should all be targeting that emerald city on a hill that we're working towards is real-time integration of our data from various systems into our reporting and analytics, right? That is the goal. Some people are very close on that journey. Other people may be a decade or more away on that journey, right? So just be aware of, we should all be aware of that stuff. But Andy, Jack has a great question here that I think you would be more than qualified to answer. Is that he's starting to get into data engineering. Should he be starting with Kimball, or is there something else he should be looking at? And maybe we should even take a step back and define what Kimball is before we guide him or others down that path.
Oh, I'm sure Donald's typing it into the chat right
Donald's driving. Donald Barrett.
now. Oh yeah. Well, he's got those fancy cars. He could be hands free.
Don't try it. Don't type it in, Donald. We got you. Andy's got you covered.
Be careful. Be careful. So, Kimball is Ralph Kimball. Was he's still around?
Yes.
And he retired from consulting. They used to do consulting. He and his team wrote the Data Warehouse Toolkit books, and there's value there. And for some reason, I'm struggling to remember the name of the guy he worked for, who also proposed models for data warehouses. And y'all will know it. I cannot remember his name for the life of me. I've got his books here. We're actually connected on LinkedIn. I'm a fanboy. And both of these gentlemen came up with slightly different approaches.
Are you thinking of Bill Inman?
Yes, thank you, Bill Inman. And apologies.
I don't know if they worked together, but it was always like the two sides of doing things, right? And then reading some of the articles and stuff in the later years, it's kind of they've admitted they were a lot closer than right, but a lot of people said you got Inman's approach, you got Kimball's approach, right? So
and my take on it, I think Kimball did work with him early on. I could be mistaken. And then he definitely split away. And I think there was maybe a touch of animosity early on in that, but that never happens with technical people.
Oh, never.
We all just get along. But you're right. They did have some closer conversation. In my view, and this is abstract, and if you fight me on it, I'll say you're probably right. I think Inman was virtualizing what Kimball was trying to materialize. And that's two different approaches to solving the same problem. But those are philosophies behind data warehousing. Now, Kimball's approach is build a star schema. That used to go by hub and spoke.
Right.
And, way back in the day, there's a great book on star schemas by Chris Adamson.
Yes.
If you want to start right now and learn about it. Kimball's work. There you go. Yeah. Kimball's work. But he was the first I read on that with, like I said, the data warehouse toolkit. Is it a good idea to go learn that stuff if you're getting started? I mean, I don't know that you need to go back and read Kimball's book, but there's an awful lot of baby in that bath water. And again, if it's 2025.
So let me
hang on.
Go ahead, Chris.
I've got an interesting challenge for both of you right now. What books do you have within arm's reach that you use professionally? I have the star schema.
Am I allowed to move my chair a little bit?
A little bit, you can use it. So star schema.
Like they're all down here.
Yeah.
X patterns.
Okay. I'm getting my books.
Effective data storytelling.
Oh, wow.
Right. And good energy.
So some of those are on Kindle for me because that's where the star schema one lives.
Okay.
Right. Now it just so happens this building the data lakehouse, Bill Inman was an author of this. I can't say I fully read it, but I use it as more reference. The Azure Data Lakehouse Toolkit.
Okay.
Nice.
Right. This is funny. So the ideal team player.
Okay.
The data storytelling, like you.
There you go.
Oh, there's my Kindle, my stuff for the Kindle ones. But the last one, which I think is going to be kind of funny, people will love this. The definitive guide to DAX is within arm's reach. Andy, what do you got?
That's exactly what Belinda said too.
Oh, cool. The only one I can put my hand on right now, I've got stacks of books that I can't unstack them, but there's more here. A lot of them are the same ones you've got. Azure Data Factory by Example by Richard Swinbank. This is a second edition. I have the first. This is a great one for both ADF, and there's a lot of similarity and crossover to Fabric Data Factory. So I think Swinbank is a genius. I wish I could write like him. And he and I communicate, I don't know, every 3 or 4 months by chat on LinkedIn. But I love this book. And I've written some on Azure Data Factory. I still recommend his book. I hold it up when I'm delivering my day of Azure Data Factory training every time in the class and say, if you buy my book, that's great. I'll put that quarter towards coffee. But this is the book I recommend.
Awesome.
So
that's good. So
sorry, that was really impromptu, but I know
it was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
it's kind of back to Jack's question, right? And and a little bit of your answer. I pretty much agree with you that you could go back and read Kimball's books. What you need to pull out of them though is the concepts, because the techniques are totally different, right? And
absolutely
throughout your career, you've implemented some of these techniques in SSIS and into Azure Data Factory, right? And I believe now you're starting to get into looking how you take the same frameworks that you've done in the past and look at it in Fabric, right? So but knowing the concept. So where have you seen all that going from? Because I think like if you look at Kimball, he's going to talk a lot of what we were able to put in with patterns with SSIS or just SQL itself. How have you seen that evolution?
So it's fair. I'm not 100% sure of this, but I think I heard it from somebody who heard it from someone. The SSIS data flow task I heard was designed based on Kimball's ideas, some of the work he had put out and published. And it's definitely very similar and facilitates building in Kimball's star schema loads. definitely, whether that's accurate or not, whether they based it on his work or not. Um, you made an extremely important point for the engineering part of data engineering, and this applies across all engineering disciplines. Kevin, you talked about the difference, I believe, between, you said concepts, and that the concepts stick around, and then the implementations. And I separate those ideas by talking about principles and preferences. And so principles never change, and preferences do. We get new shiny tools that we can use, platforms that are being developed all the time. And there's stuff that's probably a year or two old right now as we're recording this that we won't learn about for another 4 or 5 years, when they mature and they become more prevalent and they get more traction. This is a natural cycle that just happens. It's almost an evolutionary cycle in technology, and you see this all the time. And if you've been at it for almost 50 years, what you'll see is like meta patterns repeating themselves at the platform levels. You'll see like the old mainframe days go to client server, and then you see client server go back to these bigger, more powerful machines, and then you see distributed computing, kind of like what client server was on a one server and one client, now spread out, being force multiplied into some network, and then you see that expand into the web. These sorts of things just happen. Very self-similar. And I'm using a term from back in the days when fractals were pop science, and a lot of people talked about those. But these principles don't go away. They hold all throughout this. And sometimes what I see, and I find unfortunate, is if you mention a principle in the context of something someone doesn't prefer. I've run into this most recently with SSIS. And you're talking about this principle of, I think that the thing I brought up was using parameterization, using a parameters pattern. The SSIS catalog had a really solid implementation of how they managed that. And I mentioned it in the context of, I'm doing some ADF work and I'm building a parameters table basically based off of the way they did it in the SSIS catalog. And people, well, SSIS, what is it? 2005 and 20-year-old technology. And I'm 61. Okay. So I'm right there with Arnold in that movie when he says I'm old, but not obsolete. Okay. And I'm not trying to be arrogant about this stuff or conceited. I get accused of that every now and then, and it's okay. Yeah. If you can't win in the argument, go ahead and call people names. But I do know what I'm talking about with this. I've got plenty of notches, on my keyboard here that I've carved data warehouse successful projects out every time you make a notch on the keyboard. And so based on that evidence, I'm going to sound conceited, maybe arrogant when I say I know what I'm talking about when it comes to this. And those principles hold. You're absolutely right about describing Kimball's work that way. If I was doing this today, if I was starting to learn data engineering today, I would definitely learn about the star schema. I would learn as much as I can about the semantic model in Power BI. It's arguably the most powerful reporting platform on the planet in 2025, most popular. I would not go back and learn SSIS unless you have some compelling reason to. Unless part of your job is supporting clients that are still running it, don't bother. Start with Fabric.
That's
what I would say today. Definitely start and learn it there. And your customer as a data engineer is the analyst. It's the person building these dashboards. You learn as much about their job as you can so that you can serve them well. That would be my advice.
Yeah. I would agree. And somebody else, and there's been a lot of chatter in the chat about this, because they asked, like, as somebody just starting, should they learn Fabric, right? But if you Fabric is the platform, right? But if you learn the concepts, the principles, as you put out there, then definitely learn how to implement those principles on Fabric. I think it's a good place to go. Now, of course, we
Sure.
call this Stream Fabric Fridays. We all work very closely with Microsoft Technologies, right?
Yep.
But I know you've worked with other ones as well, Snowflake and things like that. Those principles still go across even to how Snowflake's
Absolutely.
platform is, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or
Yep.
Databricks or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
learn the principles, then learn the how to implement those principles, right?
Yeah.
And you'll be able to move around anywhere. I think that's really the key. So
Yeah.
and also as Fabric expands, you're going to be able to say, I could implement my principle better now as something else has come out.
Yeah.
Well, and okay, so we're nearing the end of the stream. We've got time for
I know it
one last
always goes
question.
very quickly.
Yeah, it's amazing how fast a good conversation goes, isn't it? But Fernando asks, what's the difference between a DBA and a data engineer? And Chewy responds with, you can convince a DBA with cookies and coffee to create a database for you. A data engineer is more relentless.
I'll work for cookies and coffee. I will as well. So I think we're both in that same boat. That's a similarity between them. DBAs, I don't think of as in the same realm, the same part of the Venn or Euler as software developers.
Mhm.
In fact, I am a developer. So I was a
Mhm.
software developer, and then I became a data engineer and a database developer, which is still a different animal. It's still over here in this Euler where developers are. I don't want DBAs to be in that box.
Mhm.
I want a DBA I want their personality to be that they don't like change. I just want it to turn them off. I want it to bother them when things just change. It doesn't matter why, if it's better or worse. The change itself, I want it to bother them. I managed
That's
a
interesting.
team at Unisys that grew up to about 40 people
Mhm.
back 10, 12 years ago. And I hired DBAs and I asked questions to try and find out if their personality was resistant to change.
Mm.
That's part of the job. And I want that in their bios, okay? I want it in their heart. I want them to be mad when something changes. I'm okay with that. I
So
want
maybe
cranky
more
old
basically,
DBAs.
well, I agree with you. I always thought the DBAs maintained the performance and functionality, like base functionality of the database, so we could rely upon it, we could depend upon it. A data engineer is who built content on top of that database, right?
Absolutely.
And so you're talking platform versus developer. That's the real line that separates them. Now,
I love that.
the tricky
Yeah.
question I want to hear from both of you in rapid fire, because we only have a couple, we have like 2 minutes to respond to this, and then we're going to go back, is
Okay.
have we killed the DBA with Fabric?
No.
Oh, well, that was easy.
Well, okay. Wow, we could debate this because I would say yes, because where I see DBAs fitting in is like what we said, is they're going to take care of the platform, the performance and everything. And there's less of that up there. So, and a lot of companies tried to move their DBAs into data engineers. I do like Andy's better definition. And these companies that still have to run their SQL databases either on their own Iron, right, or up on Azure, definitely need DBAs. But
Yep.
once you kind of get into Fabric and everything, I don't think you need the DBA role in that solution.
Yeah, I'm going to say Fabric resolves a lot of the need for the DBA, where that position is on life support with Fabric and other platforms of its kind, but it's not over because we're seeing Fabric databases are coming on. You're still going to need that. Hey, this stuff can't change mentality, performance wise, functionality wise, for that DBA to, for them to monitor and keep that up and running. But a lot, where you might have had a team of 10 to 50 DBAs in the past, you might be looking at, 1 to 4 or something
Yeah.
like that, right?
Yeah, I
I think
agree.
it's greatly diminished.
I would throw out two reasons why I said no.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them, actually three books. The Mythical Man Month by Fred Brooks. World War Z,
Okay.
it's fiction, which the concept of the 10th man is in there. The movie's okay, but actually the movie's good and the book is good. It's not a competition in my mind. And the last one, and I slipped in and forgot the last one. Well, I was running my mouth about World War Z. What was the other
I think
one?
we had to stream there and leave everybody on.
Yeah.
We'll leave a cliffhanger
be.
for the
Yeah.
future.
I'll think of it.
So we'll transition this right over to Andy putting in a plug for his live stream.
That's
Andy,
true.
when is
You can
your
answer that
live
at-
stream going next?
So every Friday at noon, I listen to this live stream every time I can. For me, it's 9:30 a.m. And now, yeah, we're actually coming up on 9:30, and 8. I think it starts on 8:30 at noon Eastern, and it's on YouTube and X, Rumble, LinkedIn, and I'm trying to. There's 5. I can't. Oh, Twitch. And I also do, thanks for putting this up. I do live online training. I have a class coming up, a day of Fabric Data Factory. I talk about some of these principles versus preferences in there. The focus of the day is to get you from self-taught or just getting started up to functional, literate in Fabric Data Factory, so you can take it from there. I also do, and it's hard to see behind Kevin's image there, is I do one on Azure Data Factory as well. So then every now and then. But thank you for letting me do the advertising. Thank you, gents, for first asking me to be on here. And I hope and pray you don't regret that decision to allow me to be on. I've had a blast.
I had a blast. This was great conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, Andy, this has been fantastic. And really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come online. Hey, everybody, go follow. If you're not subscribed to Andy's YouTube channel, Belinda has posted his link in the chat. Don't leave right now. We're not done. Hold on a second. Do follow him. I do want to call out. We are still going to be doing the best day ever at FabCon. So if you're going to be at FabCon, get your shirt. We're all going to be wearing this. Yeah. Wearing this shirt one of the days. Look for messaging. It's going to go out. So we're going to be having our best day ever at FabCon. So get in on that fun time. And we really hope to see everyone there at FabCon. Andy, are you going to be at FabCon?
I'm not, and I saw someone asking if I was going to be at the Atlanta Sequel Saturday. I'm cutting back on my travel this year. There's just a lot going on, just in my life and in business.
Yeah,
and unfortunately,
I hear you. Kevin, you'll be at FabCon, yes?
No, I won't. I'm not going to be going.
Oh my. Okay, well, just me then.
It's just
you.
I will be at FabCon. I will be there. I'm excited. I got booth 413. So come see me. I think we're going to be doing like lots of live streams, interviews on live streams. So if you're not at FabCon, stay tuned to this channel. There's going to be a whole bunch of announcements about to roll out on this. It's going to be an exciting time. And with that, we got to get going. Thank you guys. Yep. Andy, thank you. Kevin, as always, thank you, sir.
Thanks. It was great.
Yeah, and we will see you guys later. Have the best day ever. Peace. Digital combines strategic industry insight and advanced technical expertise to uncover and solve your digital transformation challenges. If you're interested in learning more, check out our website at bakertilly.com/digital.